You're listening to the Limitless Wealth Method Podcast. Smart ideas, real strategies, and candid conversations for business leaders. Here's your host, Jason Hilliard.
What's up, everyone? This is Jason Hilliard. Welcome to the Limitless Wealth Method Podcast, my effort to share the ideas, strategies, and insights that help entrepreneurs, executives, and investors build wealth and live without limits. Every week, I'm pulling back the curtain on money, leadership, lifestyle, fitness, mindset, and emerging tech. Basically, anything that can help you perform at your highest level. So if you're getting value from this, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe on your favorite platform, watch episodes on YouTube, and share it with just one person in your network who'd get something out of it. My goal is simple, to help you grow your wealth and your life one episode at a time. Let's get into it. This episode is a little different. I want to have a real, honest conversation about why so many people, even those earning six figures, still feel like they're running on a treadmill. We'll break down what's broken in the system, but more importantly, we'll talk about the steps you can take to play a different game and actually build lasting wealth. A few days ago, I sent my wife a blog post by Mike Green. He's a market analyst I respect and told her to read it. I don't do that often, but this piece went viral because it exposed something most people feel but can't articulate. The real cost of just existing in America today has become nearly impossible for most families. Mike Green's headline number was shocking. He argued that the real poverty line in America isn't the official $31,200. It's closer to $140,000 for a family of four. When Jen and I read it, her first reaction was, that honestly makes sense. So we dug into the math and suddenly everything made sense in a way it had never before. So today we're breaking down this analysis, sharing our own numbers, the real ones, and talking about why baby boomers or even your parents don't understand why you're struggling, why $80,000 feels like poverty, and what this means for building actual wealth in an economy designed to extract it. Fair warning, this is going to make you possibly a little angry, but it's also going to make you feel less alone. And it's going to give you the clarity on what you're actually up against. So let's start with the number that broke the internet, $140,000 as the real poverty line. Here's where this comes from. The official poverty line for a family of four in 2024 is $31,200. That's the number the government uses to determine who gets benefits, who's considered poor, and who's supposedly doing okay. If you make $32,000, according to the government, you're above the poverty line. You're not in crisis. But here's the problem. That number comes from 1963. An economist named Molly Orshansky noticed that families spent about 1/3 of their income on food. So she calculated a minimum adequate food budget and multiplied it by 3. That became the poverty line. In 1963, that formula worked because the proportions were roughly accurate. You spent 1/3 on food, 1/3 on housing, and 1/3 on everything else. But think about what life looked like then. One income could support a family. Housing was cheap, enough that a Teamster could buy a house in New Jersey. Healthcare was like $10 a month through your employer. Childcare basically didn't exist as a market because one parent stayed home or a family helped, or the neighbor watched the kids. College you could pay for with just a summer job. Retirement was a pension and your employer's problem, not yours. So that 3 times food formula, it roughly worked as a crisis threshold. Below that line, you were genuinely struggling. Above it, you had a fighting chance. But everything changed, and here's the key insight. If you use Orshansky's same logic today, if you keep her principle that the poverty line is defined by the inverse of food's budget share, the multiplier isn't 3 anymore. Why? Because we spend 5 to 7% of our income on food now. Food got way cheaper. We're an agricultural superpower. We import from everywhere. Technology made production more efficient, but everything else exploded. Housing now takes 35 to 45% of a household's spending. Healthcare is 15 to 25%, and childcare, for families with young kids, childcare can eat 20 to 40% of income. If you apply Orshansky's formula with today's food share, the multiplier becomes 16, which means the crisis threshold, the too little line, isn't 31,000 anymore. It's between $130,000 and $150,000. Let that sink in. So a family earning $80,000, the median household income, isn't middle class in the way we think about it. By the original logic of the poverty measurement, they're in poverty. That was us over 10 years ago. And I remember what that felt like. Jen remembers putting groceries back at the checkout. We couldn't go out to dinner because we couldn't afford the babysitter, but we weren't poor. We had college degrees, we had jobs, we were doing everything right, and we were drowning. When Mike Green built a basic needs budget with no vacations, no Netflix, no luxuries, just the bare minimum to exist, here's what he calculated for a family of 4 with 2 earners and 2 kids. These are national averages, and they're conservative estimates. Healthcare was $32,773. Housing was $23,267. Food was $14,700. Transportation was almost $15,000. Healthcare was $10,500. And other essentials was about $22,000. That's around $118,000 in required net income. If you add taxes, federal, state, and FICA, and you need a gross income of about $136,500 just to break even. That's not to save, not to invest. It's not to take a vacation, just to pay for the privilege of working and raising kids. The child care number is what kills most families, $32,000 a year. It's the single largest line item, bigger than housing. And here's the trap. To reach that median household income of $80,000, most families need 2 earners, but the moment you add a second earner to chase that income, you trigger the child care expense. So you're working to pay someone else to watch your kids so you can go to work. It's a closed loop. If one parent stays home, the income drops to $40,000 or $50,000, well below what you need to survive. If both parents work to hit $100,000, you hand over $32,000 to daycare. The second earner isn't working for a better life. The second earner is working to clear maybe $1,000 to $2,000 extra a month after you pay for childcare, the second car, the work clothes, the lunch is out. And people may say, well, why don't you just stay home? And the answer is because they can't afford to lose even that $1,000 to $2,000. This is what Mike Green calls the cost of participation. You're not buying luxury. You're buying the ticket to participate in the economy. When critics came after Mike Green, and they certainly did, the think tanks came out swinging. They said, well, you're cherry-picking expensive cities. $140,000 is ridiculous. But he wasn't. He used Essex County, New Jersey, which isn't Manhattan. It's a working-class suburb. And when people said that's not real America, he ran the numbers for Lynchburg, Virginia, literally the most statistically average city in the United States. You know what that number was there? 94,000. Still 3 times the official poverty line. And here's what really got me. He went on to Zillow and he looked at actual rents in Caldwell, New Jersey. Not theoretical rents, not CPI adjusted rents, actual listings. There were 7 2-bedroom units available in the entire town. The cheapest one was $2,715 a month. That's more than our first mortgage. His model allocated, or it only allocated about $1,938 a month for housing. The reality was, it was more like $2,715. That's a $777 monthly gap, or $9,300 a year that you have to earn extra, which means you need another $12,000 to $13,000 in gross salary just to cover the difference between the average and the actual market. So when he says $140,000, he's actually being conservative. If you plug in real housing costs in the zip codes where the jobs actually are, the number pushes past $160,000. And remember, this isn't measuring comfort. This isn't measuring middle class in a way that our parents understood it. This is measuring the floor, the crisis threshold, the line below which you cannot function. I know there are people listening who are thinking, well, we make less than that and we're fine. If you're making it work on less, I believe you. But I'd ask you to think about what you're sacrificing to make it work. Are you living with family? Did you buy your house 10 years ago when prices were lower? Are you in a low-cost area of living? Do you have a family helping with childcare? Are you one emergency away from catastrophe, or are you just not having kids? Because that's the other thing this explains, why birth rates are collapsing. People aren't choosing to be childless because they're selfish. They're doing the math and realizing they can't afford the $32,000 a year it costs to work while raising children. The system is asking families to make an investment in children, which becomes a future common good. It's the next generation of workers and taxpayers, and then penalizing them financially for doing it. When I saw this laid out, when I saw the actual math, I had this moment of clarity about why we've felt so stressed for so long. It's not that we're bad with money. It's not that we're entitled or lazy. It's that the floor moved and nobody told us. The poverty line is measuring starvation in $1963 and calling it prosperity in 2024. So we've established that the real floor, the actual cost of basic participation, is somewhere between $94,000 and $140,000, depending on where you live. But here's where it gets truly perverse. The system isn't just broken at the bottom. It's designed to trap you in the middle. Mike Green calls it the valley of death. And it's the most elegant explanation I've ever seen for why working harder can actually make you poorer. Let me walk you through this with real numbers and see if I can lay it out. So imagine a family in New Jersey. You have 2 parents and 2 kids. They're earning $35,000 a year. They're struggling, genuinely poor by anyone's definition. But here's what they have access to: Medicaid for free health care, SNAP for food assistance, maybe $600 to $800 a month, and heavy child care subsidies where they're paying maybe $50 to $100 a week instead of $600. Their cash income's low, but the state is providing a floor. Their deficits are real, but they're capped. Now, one parent works really hard, gets a promotion, maybe picks up a second job. They climb to $45,000. That's a $10,000 raise. That should be really good news, right? Except at that income level, they lose Medicaid eligibility, and suddenly they have to pay for health insurance, premiums, deductibles, and copays. The cost? About $10,000 to $12,000 a year for a family of 4. They earn $10,000 more, and their expenses went up by $10,000. They're not better off. They're actually worse off, because now they have the stress of managing healthcare bills, deductibles, and the fear of what happens if someone gets really sick. The effective tax rate on that raise is over 100%. The system just penalized them for working harder. But it gets worse. Let's say they keep grinding. Both parents are working, juggling schedules. They get to $65,000. They're working class by any definition. They should be doing better, but they're not, because at roughly this level, the child care subsidies vanish. They were paying $200 a month with subsidies. Now they're paying full market rate, $2,700 a month. That's $32,000 a year. They earned an extra $20,000 climbing from $45,000 to $65,000. Their child care costs went up by $28,000. They are objectively poorer than they were at $45,000 and infinitely more stressed because now they have both parents are working full time. They're missing their kids' childhoods and they have less money at the end of the month than when they were poor. When Green ran the actual numbers, he found that a family earning $100,000 is in a worse monthly cash position than a family earning $40,000 when you account for benefit losses. Believe it or not, the valley of death is the space between poor enough to get help and rich enough not to need it. And that valley is huge. It runs from about $40,000 to $120,000, which means the majority of American families are trapped in it. We were in it. I remember when we crossed the $100,000 in household income, Jen thought, finally, we made it. 6 figures. We should feel comfortable now. But we didn't. We felt more stressed than ever. Because by that point, we had 2 kids. We were paying full freight for everything: childcare, healthcare premiums, the second car payment, student loans. Jed did the math and realized we had less discretionary income than we did when we were making $60,000. Because the costs scale faster than the income, and nobody tells you this. The narrative is just work harder, just earn more, just climb the ladder. But the ladder's broken. Every rung you climb triggers a new expense or benefit loss. And then people look at you and say, what are you complaining about? You make six figures. You're rich on paper, but you're living paycheck to paycheck because the system extracted every dollar of that raise before you ever saw it. Mike Green has this line that I think about constantly. Altruism is a function of surplus. In other words, it's easy to be generous and to be charitable, to care about other people's problems when you have breathing room, when you have access capacity. But when you're drowning, when you're working 60 plus hours a week and still can't afford to fix your car, you don't have the emotional bandwidth to care about anyone else. You're in survival mode. And this is what explains the political rage we're seeing. The family earning $65,000, the family that just lost their subsidies and is now paying $32,000 for daycare and $12,000 for health care. They look at the family earning $30,000 and getting subsidized everything, and they feel rage. Not because they're bad people, because they're drowning and they see someone else getting a life vest while they're being told to swim harder. The economist calls this resentment or lack of empathy. Mike Green calls it rational. It's not about the goods. It's about the breach of contract. The American deal was that effort equals security. Work hard, play by the rules, and you'll be okay. But that deal is broken. Effort no longer yields security. It yields exhaustion and debt. You see it on social media. The rage at anyone who seems to be getting something for free. And the elites look at that rage and call it racism or ignorance. They're missing the mechanism. When you're in the valley of death, when you're working full time and still can't afford rent, and you see someone else getting housing assistance, you don't feel solidarity. You feel abandoned because the system is telling you you're too rich for help, but too poor to survive. And that's the trap. The only way to be okay in this system is either be destitute enough to qualify for aid or rich enough not to need it. Everyone in the middle is being cannibalized. When you lose $1 of benefits for every dollar you earn, that's effectively a 100% tax rate. When you lose $1.40 in benefits for every dollar you earn, that's a 140% tax rate. No one would take that deal. No one does take that deal. That's why labor force participation is down. That's why people are choosing to stay at a $40,000 limit rather than climb to $70,000. It's not laziness, it's math. So how do you escape the valley? You jump. You don't climb. You can't climb. The math doesn't work. You have to leap from $60,000 to $150,000. You have to find a way to skip the entire middle section, which most people can't do. You need a specialized degree, or you need to start a business, or you need to marry someone who's also high earning. You need luck and timing and access to capital, or you need to have been born into it. And that's how you get cast. That's how you get a permanent underclass and a permanent overclass with no mobility in between them. This is what our parents don't understand, because when they were climbing the ladder, the rungs were solid. Each raise actually made them better off. They didn't have benefit cliffs. They didn't have $32,000 childcare bills. They didn't have $20,000 deductibles. They had pensions and cheap housing and one income. And they look at us and say, "We did it. Why can't you?" And the answer is because the game changed and nobody told us. I want to share a story. This was about 2012. We had 2 kids under 3. I was working at a wealth management firm. Jen was working. We were paying about $2,400 a month for daycare for 2 kids. Our mortgage was about $1,800. Healthcare premiums were around $1,200. We had 1 car payment, student loans, the usual. We sat down one night and ran the numbers, and we were negative every month. We were going backwards. We were draining our savings to cover basic expenses. And Jen said, "What if I just quit? What if I stay home?" Because we'd save the $2,400 in childcare. But the fact was we'd lose her income. So we'd still be negative or net negative on the year, but we'd be less so. But Jen would also be home with the kids, and we'd stop hemorrhaging money on daycare. Jen remembers feeling like a failure, like I have a college degree, I'm supposed to be able to work and contribute, but the math didn't work. And that's not her failure. That's the system's failure. So what did we do? We jumped. I left the firm and started my own practice. It was terrifying. We had no safety net, but it was the only way to skip the valley. I had to jump the valley in one move because anything in between was unsustainable. And we got lucky. We got incredibly lucky. The business worked. We had no major emergencies, but most people don't have that option. Most people can't just start a business or leap to a $150,000 job. And that's the problem. Escaping the valley requires either extraordinary luck or extraordinary privilege, which means it's not a meritocracy, it's a lottery. That's the valley of death. The system is designed to trap you between too poor to make it and too rich for help. And if you're stuck there, you're not imagining it. The math is broken. So let's say you made it. You escaped the valley. You're earning $150,000, maybe $200,000. You've got the house in the suburbs. You have 2 cars. The kids are in a good school. You're living the dream, right? This is what Mike Crean calls the Mockery Machine. It's the system that takes everything you think is building wealth and turns it into a trap that extracts your money while making you feel rich. I want to be really clear. If you're earning $200,000, you are objectively better off than someone earning $50,000. You have more options, more security, more breathing room. But here's the thing. You're now wealthy. You're high income, and the difference matters. Wealth is assets. Income is just permission to work. Wealth is what you own that generates money without your labor. Income is what you trade your time for. And the Mockery Machine is designed to convert your high income into the appearance of wealth while actually extracting it. Let's talk about the house, the American dream. Your parents told you, buy a house, build equity, it's the best investment you'll ever make. Here's what happened. For our parents' generation, buying a house in 1975 for $40,000, and then they sell it in 2005 for $400,000. It felt like wealth creation. They made $360,000, but they didn't. Because that $40,000 house in 1975 is about $220,000 in 2005 when you adjust for inflation. So the real gain is $180,000 over 30 years. That's about $6,000 a year in growth before you account for maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and renovations. Mike Crean breaks this down beautifully. He says the average homeowner spends 1 to 2% of home value annually on maintenance. Property taxes are another 1 to 2%. Insurance is 0.5 to 1%. So on a $400,000 house, you're paying $10,000 to $20,000 a year just to maintain it. So your $6,000 annual gain is actually a $4,000 to $14,000 loss. Annual loss, sorry. And that's before you account for the mortgage interest you paid for 30 years. On a $320,000 mortgage at 6%, you paid about $370,000 in interest over the life of the loan. So you paid $320,000 for the house, $370,000 in interest, and $300,000 in maintenance and taxes over 30 years. That's $990,000 to own a house worth $400,000. And people call that wealth building. But here's the real kicker. You can't access that $400,000 without selling the house. And if you sell the house, where do you live? You buy another house at inflated prices. So the equity is trapped. It's phantom wealth. You're rich on paper, but you can't spend it without becoming homeless. Unless you do a reverse mortgage, which is just bank buying your house from you slowly while you still live in it. You're converting your asset back into income, which you then spend, and when you die, the bank takes the house. So the house isn't an asset. It's a liability that appreciates. It's a consumption good that you're forced to maintain. It provides housing services which have value, but it's not building wealth in the way we think about it. And yet we're told that it's the foundation of the American dream because it serves the financial system. You take a 30-year mortgage, which means the bank gets 30 years of interest payments. You pay property taxes, which funds local government. You buy insurance, which feeds the insurance industry. You hire contractors for maintenance and renovations. The house is a wealth extraction machine disguised as an investment. Let's talk about my favorite, 401ks, because this is where a lot of people get tripped up. The 401k was never actually designed to be a main retirement system for Americans. Back in 1978, Congress passed Section 401k to let executives defer bonuses and reduce taxes. It was a tool for high earners, not the average worker. But over time, companies realized that they could actually replace pensions with 401ks, shifting the risk and responsibility from the company to the individual. With a pension, a company handled all the heavy lifting. They funded it, managed investments, and guaranteed a monthly payout for life. If the market tanked, that was their problem, not yours. But with a 401k, you're in the driver's seat for everything. How much to save, where to invest, when to rebalance. If you retire during a downturn, you're the one who takes the hit. And here's the kicker. Along the way, there are fees at every step. Expense ratios on mutual funds, administrative costs, and sometimes advisory fees if you want professional guidance. Even if each fee seems small, 0.5% here, 1% there, over decades it adds up. For example, if you invest $500 a month for 30 years at a 7% return, you'd end up with about $566,000. But if fees eat up at 2%, just 2% of your returns, you're left with $416,000, $150,000 difference. It's not that advisors or fund managers are out to get you. It's that the system itself is built to take a slice at every turn. Most people need guidance to navigate all this, and that's where good advisors actually add value. They help you avoid common pitfalls. They optimize your strategy and help you stay on track for your goals. But the reality is there's no way to completely sidestep fees if you're saving for retirement in America. Social Security alone won't cut it. The key is to be aware, ask questions, and make sure you're getting real value for anything you're paying, because in the system, every percentage point truly matters. And then there's healthcare. You're 55. You're planning to retire at 65 when Medicare kicks in. You've saved $800,000 in your 401k. You're feeling good. Then you get laid off. You lose your health insurance. Cobra costs $2,000 a month for a family. You need coverage for 10 years until Medicare. That's $240,000. But it's worse than that because you also have deductibles and copays. Realistically, you're spending $300,000 to $400,000 on healthcare in that decade. So half your retirement savings goes to healthcare before you even retire. And if you get really sick, if you get cancer, God forbid, or you need surgery, you could burn through the whole $800,000, at which point you go bankrupt, lose everything, and go on Medicaid, which you could have done from the beginning if you just been poor. The system punishes savers. And this is what Mike Green means by the Mockery Machine. You did everything right. You worked hard. You saved. You bought a house. You maxed out your 401k. And the system extracted it all through fees, taxes, healthcare costs, and inflation. Then there's inheritance. A lot of people are counting on inheriting from their parents. Your parents are 75. They own a house worth $500,000 free and clear. They've got $300,000 in retirement savings. And on paper, that's an $800,000 inheritance. But it's not, because they're not going to live another 15 to 20 years. And in those final years, they're going to need care. Nursing homes cost $100,000 to $120,000 a year. If your mom needs 5 years of care, that's $500,000 to $600,000. The retirement savings are gone in 3 years. Then they have to sell the house, and the house money pays for the next few years. And if they live longer than the money lasts, Medicaid kicks in. But only after they've spent down everything. There's no inheritance. The nursing home took it all. So the wealth transfer that was supposed to happen, the thing that was supposed to give the next generation a leg up, it's gone. 70% of the inherited wealth is lost by the second generation. Not because the kids are irresponsible, but because the system extracted it through end-of-life healthcare costs. You look at this and you realize the house isn't wealth. The 401k is a fee extraction machine. Healthcare will bankrupt you, and there's no inheritance coming. So what are we really building? We're building the appearance of wealth while funding everyone else's actual wealth. So how do we actually, how do wealthy people do it differently? They don't rely on income. They own assets that generate income. They own businesses. They own rental properties. They own stocks that pay dividends. They use debt strategically to buy appreciating assets while deducting the interest. They have trusts and LLCs that protect wealth from taxes and lawsuits. They play a completely different game, and the gap between high-income professional and actual wealthy is enormous. The professional makes $200,000 and pays 35% in taxes and spends the rest. The wealthy person makes $200,000 in capital gains and pays 15% in taxes and reinvests the rest into more assets. And the system is designed to keep those two groups separate, because if you're working for income, you don't have time to build wealth. You're too busy working to pay for the house, the 401k fees, the health care, the kids' college. And by the time you're 65 and finally have time, you're too old and too tired and too risk averse to start. That's the trap. That's the mockery machine that keeps you running on a treadmill, thinking you're building wealth while actually just funding the system. The system is stacked, but if you are in a position of strength, you have options. Here's what I would recommend to those who want to move beyond the traditional wealth traps. The first and easiest place to start is an estate plan and trust. For high-income earners and anyone with significant assets, the single best first move is to get your estate plan in order. Work with an estate attorney to set up a basic trust. Why? It keeps your wealth out of probate. It gives you control over how assets are distributed and can protect assets from lawsuits or creditors. It also lays the foundation for advanced strategies. If you own a home, have kids, or have built up savings, a trust is the lowest hanging fruit for protecting your wealth and your family. Once your trust is in place, you can consider real estate as an alternative wealth builder. Look at how your assets are working for you. Real estate beyond your primary residence can generate passive income, appreciate, and offer tax advantages. You might be able to use a 1031 DST exchange to defer taxes when you sell and reinvest. Real estate moves differently than stocks, adding diversification. Treat it as a business, run the numbers, and start small. After that, you can explore advanced strategies. If you've already set up your trust and you started building wealth through real estate or other asset, you're ahead of the game. At this stage, it's worth sitting down with your wealth advisor and estate attorney to explore even more advanced strategies. These might include things like family limited partnerships or LLCs for managing and transferring family assets, enter retained annuity trusts to pass on appreciating assets with minimal tax, dynasty trusts to protect wealth across multiple generations, or even offshore trusts and entities for asset protection and international diversification. These tools aren't for everyone, but if you have a significant amount of assets or complex family needs, they can provide powerful ways to grow and protect and transfer wealth efficiently. The key is to work with experienced professionals who can tailor these strategies to your unique situation and goals. Look, I know this is heavy, but here's what I want you to take away from this. First, you're not failing. If you're making $80,000 or $100,000 or even $150,000 and you feel broke, you're not imagining it. The math is broken. The system is designed to extract your wealth while making you feel like you're building it. Second, understanding the game is the first step to playing it differently. Once you see the valley of death, once you see the mockery machine, you can start making different choices. You can stop chasing income and start building assets. You can start investing in things you control. You can stop playing their game and start building your own. For Jen and me, this has completely changed how we think about our business. But we can choose to be honest about what the system is. We can help people see the trap and navigate it as best they can. And we can use this podcast to start conversations that need to happen, because the more people who understand this, the more pressure there is to fix it. If this episode hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to your friends who are drowning in the valley. Send it to your parents who don't understand why younger generations are struggling. Send it to anyone who thinks they're failing when really the system is failing them. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to dive deeper into wealth building strategies that actually work in this environment, strategies that help you escape the extraction machine and build real wealth, give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram or personally on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.